Good evening. My name is William Tarter, and I am the Community Engagement Specialist for One Community. And I am pleased to welcome you to the first ever Tech Town Hall, presented by One Community and Civic Commons Idea Stream. I am honored to be serving tonight as your Master of Ceremony. I'm thrilled to see all of you here. As you know, Cleveland is in the middle of a $5.5 billion economic investment boon just here in downtown Cleveland alone. The question is how do we keep this momentum going? One thing we know for sure, technology and innovation are going to play a key role. Just last week, Parker Hannifin announced that they were going to create a technology incubator that will incubate innovative ideas. And that is why we are here tonight, to hear from thought leaders on how we can collectively move our region forward. At this time, I would like to recognize our public officials who have joined us this evening. We are thrilled to be joined by County Executive Candidate Jack Schron. Thank you, Jack, for being here. We're also thrilled to be joined by County Executive Candidate Mr. Armin Budish. Thank you so much, Armin, for joining us. And thank you to Ms. Budish as well for joining us. Thank you. If you would like to tweet during this event, I ask that you please use the hashtag TechTownHall. At this time, I'd like to ask for you to turn off any cell phones or pagers that you might have, if you still use pagers. And thank you again for your understanding. As I stated earlier, this event is being held as a partnership with One Community and Civic Commons Idea Stream. I would like to welcome at this time the Chief Marketing Officer for One Community, Ms. Jane Passantino, for welcome remarks. Jane?
Thank you, Will. Welcome, and thank you all for coming out this evening. I'm Jane Passantino, Chief Marketing Officer at One Community. I woke up this morning really excited, anticipating this event. We've talked so much about it, but I was thinking about when I was a young college graduate, and I had the opportunity, my first job at AT&T Bell Laboratories. And I didn't know anything about technology. At the time, I think it was called computer science, and I had finished my statistics class by punching these little cards into a mainframe and hoping I'd pass the class. So I arrive at Bell Laboratories and wandering down the halls and looking into these rooms and conferences with scientists and think tanks and demonstration labs. And they were working on things like look-ahead interflow, caller ID, the UnPBX, least cost routing. Okay, none of these things are exciting us today, perhaps as we think about how are we inventing something new? How have we invented this? But they have transformed our lives, and they were revolutionary at the time. So to me, that is what the excitement of technology is all about, and that is why I was hooked from day one. It's really all about the possibilities. And that's why we're here tonight, and that is why I get up and go to work every day at One Community, because it is the possibilities of technology that will change our region. We have to make technology an easier part of our lives so people aren't intimidated by it. It is essential for our successful life, our robust economy, and our growing region. So I definitely understand and believe that we need STEM education, we need diligent work, we need creative thinking for all of this to happen. But it really is all about possibilities, and we want to engage everyone in thinking about the possibilities. And that is why I get up and go to work at One Community, and I'm happy to do it. So we have a mission to transform the region. We do that in a number of ways. One is clearly fiber connectivity. So we connect businesses, we connect institutions, and businesses with our new brand, Everstream, that we launched this year. Public institutions with applications that people can use every day. We have over 2,400, almost 2,500 route miles of fiber that touch 24 counties. And we're hoping that we can catalyze thought so that people that live in these communities can maximize the network. It's an open network. We can maximize the network and have the best possibilities for our region if the tech community works together with the broader community. So I thank you for coming out tonight. I'm very excited to hear what our panelists are going to say about the new digital era and digital infrastructure for the digital era. and I'm hoping to hear from all of you during Q&A and after the discussion. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Jane. And a quick clarification. Turn your volume down on your cell phones. Don't turn off your cell phones. If you like to tweet, please keep your phone on. Thank you so much, Jane. I'd like to now introduce our opening speaker, Dr. Julian Earls. Dr. Julian Earls is currently executive in residence at Cleveland State University Ahuja College of Business. He is retired from the position of director of the NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland. Glenn Research Center is engaged in research technology and systems development in aeronautical propulsion, space power, space communication, microgravity science, and fluid physics. While managing an annual budget of $773 million, he oversaw a workforce of 3,320 employees. He holds 11 university degrees, including a BS degree in physics, an MS degree in radiation biology, MS degree and PhD in radiation physics. He has been awarded 7 honorary doctoral degrees and is a graduate of the Program of Management Development at Harvard Business School. He is the author of 31 publications and has been twice awarded NASA's Medal for Outstanding Leadership, Exceptional Achievement, and Distinguished Service. At this time, Dr. Julian Earls.
After that introduction, I could hardly wait to hear myself speak. What a distinct privilege it is to be introduced by a dynamic, determined, competent young man and administrator who has the creative intellect of Jack Welch, who has the perspicacity of Frederick Douglass, who has the courage and determination of Kunta Kinte, and the physiognomy, the classic good looks, if you will, of Brad Pitt. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm aware of the time. I was giving a speech in Dallas, Texas recently. In the middle of my speech, a man walked out. I saw him the next day and said, "You walked out in the middle of my speech." Why? He said, "I went to get a haircut." I said, "Why didn't you get a haircut before I started speaking?" He said, "I didn't need a haircut before you started speaking." So I'm acutely aware of the value of time. So let me get right to the point. Firstly, thank you, Will, for inviting. No, I'm not going to tell that lie. I was going to say thanks for inviting me. I went to the Harvard Business School. I think Will Tarp went to the Pontius Pilate School of Business Administration because he told me that I was going to be here. And I started to ask, why a man of science? Why a physicist to address this topic? But it was made clear to me as I reflected upon it, based upon when our older son was in high school. He asked me for the definition of a human being, but he wanted it in engineering terms. The definition I gave him is a human being is a complete, self-contained, totally enclosed power plant, available in a variety of sizes and colors and reproducible in quantity. Human beings are relatively long-lived, have major components in duplicate, and science is rapidly making strides towards solving the spare parts problem. Humans are waterproof, amphibious, operate on a wide variety of fuels, enjoy thermostatically controlled temperatures, circulating fluid heat, evaporative cooling, have sealed and lubricated bearings, audio and optional direction and range finders, sound and sight recordings, and are equipped with a sophisticated control center called the brain. Now, when I was through with that description, it became significant to me for what has been omitted. What goes beyond the mere fact of this robot's existence and turns it into a human being? What makes it differ from such mechanical marvels as the Viking lander, the Pathfinder lander, or the Spirit and Opportunity rovers on Mars? The meaning of being human is the most significant of all subjects. Science will never be able to reduce the value of human commitment to a formula. It will never be able to reduce the value of respect one for another, technology in the service of humankind. Science cannot reduce that to arithmetic. The challenge of accomplishment in living, the depth of insight into beauty and truth, using our intellect and our competence and our ability for the betterment of humankind. These things shall always surpass the scientific mastery of nature. Or as I tell my colleagues at NASA, you can have all the technical knowledge in the world at your fingertips, but if you aren't a caring human being, you're the most dangerous creature on earth and the most unfulfilled. So this program here, looking at technology, and I believe technology in the surface of humankind, is absolutely critical, involving everyone. When I was at NASA, I used to tell all my managers and executives that I never knew anyone who took a rental car to the car wash before they turned it in. But you notice what people do with their brand new automobile, how far away they park it at the mall. They won't drive over a freshly tarred road or loose gravel. The difference in how people take care of something when they own it and when it belongs to someone else. So my emphasis was to get all employees involved as we started to think about creativity and innovation, policies and procedures, because if they thought about them, if they developed them, they had ownership in them, they treated them better. With students, I used to teach a physics course while I was working at NASA full time, and I always taught the history of physics along with the technical aspects of it. On one test, after 10 problems, I gave a bonus question. I wrote, "What can you tell me about the great physicists of the 18th century?" One student wrote, "They're all dead." I had to give her credit. The answer was absolutely correct. Well, that experience was not the first I had that taught me a lesson, because I was invited to be a guest lecturer at Purdue University. The first time I flew into Indianapolis, picked up a rental car, was driving to West Lafayette, and I got lost. There was a farm in the field. I parked the car, went over to the farmer and said, "What's the quickest way to get to West Lafayette from here?" He said, "Are you walking or driving?" I said, "I'm driving." He said, "That's the quickest way to get there." What I tell my students and what I tell people is, in life, often it is more critical to know the right questions to ask than it is to know the right answers. And that's what we have to do, develop in all of us when we talk about innovation, that ability to penetrate and ask the right questions. One thing about which I'm most proud that's taking place this coming Saturday at Hudson High School. Several years ago, a friend of mine, John Cliff, and I decided that high school students don't have a complete understanding of the economy, STEM, entrepreneurship. So we were able to successfully get through the Ohio legislature $5 million. $2 million this year for scholarships to high school students who complete projects in STEM commercialization, STEM business plans throughout the state. They can successfully compete and win $5,000 a year for 4-year scholarships to attend colleges and universities in the state of Ohio, as long as they major in fields related to STEM and entrepreneurship. Because you know as well as I that any nation that is going to move forward, that is going to make progress, has to do so on the backs of technology. I tell people it's only logical, but I give up on logic. One of the students asked me on the logic course I was teaching how I felt about observing logic in everyday circumstances. Well, I told him I got heartburn. For example, why do you press hard on the remote control when you know the batteries are dead? Why do banks charge an insufficient funds fee on money they already know you didn't have in the first place? If the psychics know numbers, why don't they just play them themselves? I always wondered why they have interstate highways in Hawaii. And I love Western movies. One night I'm watching Westerns, watching the cowboys jumping up and down on the back of horses, when suddenly it occurred to me, if logic truly prevailed, women would straddle horses and men would ride side saddle. Well, you can't let the lack of logic stop you from applying logic. You have a distinguished panel here. You are going to listen to these people who bring infinite logic here. They have infinite greater experience than I do, more competent and more relevant relationships with this topic. And without a doubt, I stand here and tell you to fasten your seatbelts because you're going to enjoy this ride from the panelists who are here. Thank you.
With Dr. Earls, you ask, and you ask nicely if he's going to be here. So thank you so much for being here and joining us and setting the tone for this event. It is an honor to be in your presence, so thank you. So at this time, we are going to invite our moderators and our panelists to join us here on the stage. Our moderator for this evening is going to be Mike Shafarenko, who is the Manager in Community Engagement, Web and Social Media Manager for IdeaStream Civic Commons. Ms. Elise Hugh got stuck on a flight in Chicago and unfortunately couldn't join us, but we are thankful to Mike, who is going to be here this evening. Mike oversees the strategy and implementation of IdeaStream's engagement, web, and social media efforts. In 2010, with a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Mike co-founded the Civic Commons, an engagement utility and consultancy serving community leaders, institutions, and the growing desire of citizens to be engaged and empowered on key initiatives. Prior to that, he was the manager of finance and administrator for the Fund for Economic Future. Mike was named one of Crain's Cleveland's 40 Under 40 in 2009. He lives in Lakewood with his wife, Jen, and his 3-week-old son, Isaac. Mike, congratulations. Thank you so much. Our first panelist is Jerry Duffy. Jerry Duffy is the general manager of global product management for GE Lighting. He is responsible for GE Lighting's professional product portfolio and directs strategic investments for new product introductions. In 2008, Duffy was appointed general manager for LED technology for GE Lighting Solutions. In this role, Duffy leads GE's global team of engineers in developing new LED products. Under his direction, the team launched a wide range of products, including outdoor systems, indoor systems, and LED replacement lamps. Duffy attended Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, graduating with a BS in physics in 1988. He also holds an MS in physics and an MBA from Case Western Reserve University. Originally from New Jersey, Duffy now resides in Solon, Ohio. Jerry Duffy. Our next panelist is Jeff Mowry. Jeff Mowry is an Ohio native from Belleville, Ohio, who graduated from Ashland College and gained a master's degree from Central Michigan University. Mr. Mowry has over 25 years in the IT industry, with 20 years working at Chrysler Corporation in various IT executive leadership positions. While at Chrysler, he served as the CIO of Detroit Diesel, a division of Mercedes-Benz Truck, and an IT executive of Mopar Parts. Mr. Mowry has worked in government for the past 5 years, serving as the Chief Information Officer of Broward County, Florida, the 16th largest county in the USA. Since May 2011, he has been serving as the first CIO of Cuyahoga County government. He recently was honored as Crain's CIO of the Year in 2014 for large nonprofits. He is currently serving as the president of Ohio County and City Information Technology Association. Mr. Jeff Mowry. Our next panelist is Jennifer Neuendorfer. Jennifer Neuendorfer is the co-founder and COO/CFO of FlashStarts, a startup accelerator and investment fund. She is responsible for selecting and coaching companies and making investment decisions. Prior to FlashStarts, Jennifer was director of new business development for Fox Networks Group, where she launched a scalable mobile broadcast network called Dial Mobile TV. Before joining Fox, she launched the promoted video and product at YouTube and Google. The product now represents the majority of YouTube's ad revenue. Jennifer holds a BA from Harvard University and an MBA from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Jennifer Neuendorfer. Our final panelist is JT Tan. JT Tan is a startup product strategist devoted to new value creation. JT has helped start 2 healthcare startups, Socrates Analytics and IntraClinics, and develop their go-to-market strategy and achieve first revenue. and continues to help other startups through his work in tech and life science incubators Bizdom and ReadyZone, respectively. JT is also on the board of the Gorilla Group, a monthly talk show style event in Ohio City that explores the trials and successes of business ownership with an established business owner and current entrepreneur. An avid ultimate frisbee player, like yours truly, he's a pianist and a father. JT appreciates and wants to help continue all the momentum that Northeast Ohio has gained across the last 15 years and has set the stage for where we are today. JT Tan. Mike?
Thank you, Will, and welcome everyone. First, I wanted to welcome you to IdeaStream. I think many of you probably know us for our television station, WVIZ PBS, or our radio station, 90.3 WCPN NPR. But we're really much more, and I wanted to just speak to that really quick before diving in. IdeaStream applies the power of media and really technology to education, culture, and citizenship. And we do that through the WVIZ and through 90.3 WCPN, but also through Civic Commons, the engagement platform, which is part of today's event, broadband interactive distance learning technology, fixed media, multiple rich media websites, and a technology-enhanced place where we are today here at the Idea Center. So just want to give a little bit of context for how we fit into today's conversation with respect to technology and innovation. Every year, our community has a State of the County address. We have a State of the City address. We just had a State of the Schools address. And in many ways, today's conversation is the state of technology and innovation. And instead of someone delivering a speech, we're going to have a discussion with these esteemed guests here today. So that's sort of the framing of today's conversation and how we're going to look at it. We're going to look at tech's role and innovation in our community, explore the state of technology and innovation in our community, and really talk about the strengths and weaknesses in our community with respect to technology and innovation and where there are opportunities for us to grow. So I want to kick it off with just kind of the state of kind of question, which is, how would you rate Northeast Ohio in terms of its competitiveness when it comes to technology and innovation? And when I ask that question, Jerry, I'm going to turn to you first. I don't mean just financial competitiveness or economic, which is certainly part of it, but what is our competitiveness with our ability to innovate new products and services and things like that? So give us your sense of the state of technology and innovation here.
Sure. Hey, I think I think there's strengths and weaknesses, and I'll probably dive to that question already. I think we have just tremendous assets and strengths in the region with some of the businesses like GE that's been here for 100 years, but the universities and the hospitals. And I think those are assets which we can build on. I think the areas that we could still do more on, I think the STEM education is critical. And I also think, as I look and as I've been involved with things in Cleveland over the last few years, a willingness to embrace change. And, sometimes when innovation comes, it's fun on one side, but there's big challenging changes that you have to make on the other side. And being willing to embrace that change and see the bright future without being too hung up on the hard parts that you have to change to get out of it, I think are critical for us. And I think as a region, I can see places like the Silicon Valley that's more focused on the bright future, but not so hung up on what we have to leave behind. And I think that's an area we could do better on.
Sure. Jeff, you came here from Florida, is that right?
Yeah.
And you were Broward County, am I saying that right? You were the CIO for them. So give us some context. How competitive are we here with respect to our tech and innovation?
I mean, it's been amazing, the amount of competitiveness. And, from a county government perspective, I say it takes a blend of the support from the top, the support from our county council, support from the county executive, allowing us to make the investment in technology, try to move it forward. The other key piece is the people within the organization. As you all know, we got a great IT team at the county. They've been very supportive of all the change that's been going on in the last 3 years at the county. And thirdly is, the vendor support has been just outstanding. Some of the small business IT support that we get not just from the big guys, not from the big Microsofts, but the local IT vendors here regionally in Cuyahoga have been just very good. I would be remiss if I didn't mention at the county, we started a loan executive program. So at the start of the new government in 2010, we had some volunteers from the private side, some retirees that were helped kind of craft the IT strategy plan before it even arrived. We've been fortunate enough, several of those individuals have stayed with me for the last 3 years, and they are both retired executives, and they volunteer their time, and one of them comes in about twice a week. So I would say the support regionally, not only from vendors, but from the people in the community willing to support, has been outstanding.
That's great. Now, Jennifer, you've been on both coasts. You've worked for a couple really small companies like Google, and no big deal there. Tell us your perspective. Are we competitive here?
So it's the right question to ask, and I would say yes. I come at this from a slightly different perspective than Jeff and Jerry, since my lens is really all around entrepreneurship. And when we think about evaluating entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurial ecosystem, we think of a couple of different variables. So it requires people, ideas, and capital. And then you marry those with institutions and infrastructure. And surprisingly, I think those are pretty similar if you think of innovation and technology at the corporate or the government level. Cleveland and Northeast Ohio is a very rich region in terms of people and ideas. We have world-class universities that are graduating undergraduates and graduate students who are competitive on a national level. I'm really impressed by the quality of the entrepreneurs that we see and the ideas that they have. In terms of capital, I think there are some disparities, and we can talk about that a little bit later as we get into strengths and weaknesses, but I think there is capital for some types of innovation, and there's more work to be done to free up capital for other types of innovation. And I'd say the same thing on the institutional level. We're lucky to have institutions in our universities and in our corporate and anchor institutions, as well as some really strong institutions on the startup level. I think a challenge for Northeast Ohio is to get all of those institutions working together in a collaborative fashion to support innovation at the small level and at the big level. And on the infrastructure perspective, we have great organizations like One Community or Blue Bridge and a lot of data centers that are supporting innovation at every single level. So I think we're very competitive there.
Okay. JT, you've been furiously taking notes on your iPad, demonstrating the use of technology.
Yes, absolutely.
What's your take? Are we competitive here?
Yeah, I think I really go lend back to the experience of when I went to Case as an undergrad, and people couldn't wait to get out of here. Just to be quite honest with you, and I think that, to Jen's point, we generate some great talent, and they go elsewhere for opportunities. So, I'd like to look at it from the standpoint of how do we retain that talent, given that HR has to execute, all of these things, and so, the career opportunities, do they exist here in Cleveland? I think that we are starting to approach that from the big institution as well as from the startup. You can now. We have at BISDM, I was really excited to see the freshman orientation class at Case coming over and seeing their local incubator. How amazing that would have been as a freshman myself. I think the other thing to build on Jen's comment was people, ideas, and capital. I think the fourth aspect of that is the opportunity to do business. And I think that speaks to, Northeast Ohio has a very accessible culture. Everybody's willing to talk to you and discuss and, just explore. And I think sometimes that's lacking in other places that are a little bit bigger, have a little bit more ego associated with it. And I think that creates the opportunity. So an example in healthcare, lots of great institutions to have a template to actually test out some of these ideas for new value that you don't see such a concentration in many other places around the United States. You look at the investments such as MedCity News that have looked at these picked 5 cities and made their business play as part of those regions' growth, and I think it all plays to that.
And just one last point to add there. I think one question that I hear people ask a lot is, how do we in Northeast Ohio become more like Silicon Valley, and how do we compete with Silicon Valley or other regions? And I think the question that we should all be answering is not how do we become like another region, but what unique strengths do we as a region have, and how do we innovate and invest in those strengths so that we are our own center of excellence based on the unique characteristics that we have.
Well, that's a great segue, Jen. Thank you for setting it up. Which is what are our natural assets here? So if we're not going to be Silicon Valley, and that's fine, or we're not going to be Boston or Research Triangle or New York or London or whatever, what are our natural assets? This is for anyone. Our natural assets here in which we can build our tech and innovation sector. Jerry?
I agree completely with Jen. And again, I'm going to bring my perspective or my lens to this. And from a GE Lighting perspective, we've been here in Cleveland 100 years. I even came to Cleveland and, I came to work for lighting, and I even personally thought, well, didn't Edison do this 100 years ago? Could there actually be anything interesting or challenging going on? And I found there was. What is more fascinating to me, and I think relevant for all of us, is our industry is going through this unbelievable, tremendous change from LED. And if you look at what LEDs are doing to the lighting industry, it will obsolete every single technology that is in this ceiling and in your home and on your streets, and it's happening fast. And so you could look at that and say, how can some 100-year-old company sitting in East Cleveland respond and adapt to that? And this is where I hope you feel the passion that I have for not just my company, but for our region and the people that are here that I think have a huge amount of passion for our history, but also that willingness to make a change and embrace the fact that you can look forward and see it going to change. So I think that when I consider that, I think that those are tremendous assets that we have to leverage. And if I look at the people that are doing that, the people that are leading that change and making it happen, they are predominantly people that came from Case, came from Cleveland State, came from Ohio State, and other schools in the region, and have embraced it and found ways to make new jobs here in Cleveland, high-tech jobs. And I think those are the kinds of strengths that we have that we have to not lose confidence that we have those and drive them to win no matter where the competition is coming from.
Others? Thoughts? What are our natural assets here?
I would say building on the people side of it. Since I've been here, the amount of cooperation that, at least from a government perspective, has been kind of blown me away, to be quite honest with you. When I first came here, I heard there was some rivalries between different local governments, different cities, and I really haven't found that to be true at all. Just this last week, I met with the Cleveland CIO, the new CIO at the City of Cleveland, and we're going to start some breakfast clubs with some of the local governments here. It just surprises me how well people work together and really to try and move it forward and to make the region better. The cooperation amongst the elected officials seem to be, when it comes to technology at least, very forward thinking and moving it forward.
Mm-hmm. JT or Jen?
Well, I think we have history in some, to speak, because I agree with the people, but to speak to some more of the industry-specific points, whether it's lighting or manufacturing or healthcare, we have some strengths in specific industries, and those strengths are pretty deep. And so I think rallying around some of those different industries and fostering collaboration across the spectrum of at what stage that innovation happens is important. And one of the things that we're looking at Flash Darts is talking to companies like GE or some of the healthcare systems or manufacturing companies about how startups can engage in their innovation process and really accelerate their innovation process. Because one of the things that we hear consistently from many of these wonderful anchor institutions that we have here in town is we have critical path items and a limited amount of resources, so we focus on the critical path items, which makes sense. But there's some really interesting areas of innovation that are slightly off the critical path. And if we can take some of this talent that's coming out of the local universities and match them with these ideas coming out of, let's say, GE Lighting, there's some really unique opportunities that we as Northeast Ohio could capitalize on.
Mm-hmm. JT?
Yeah, I just want to speak to the heritage I feel like that Cleveland has that I think is often forgotten sometimes or not spoken enough. That actually quite a few major industries have emerged out of Cleveland, Ohio, out of Northeast Ohio, and historically we've been a very entrepreneurial city, and so there's a great heritage there that it extends back to stories of people who have been there, done that, and then more importantly, capital. That there's, I think, a level of that culture, if we can get that capital to be a little bit more risk-taking to encourage this type of thing, I think that would really be a great boon and a natural sort of asset that exists. That is not something, it's hard to build that up, but it's there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's, again, an interesting segue into the question about disadvantages. I know our community, having worked at the Fund for Economic Future and being in the space of economic development for a few years, I know about Jumpstart and Nortec and BioEnterprise and all these groups trying to advance economic development. So my question in terms of what else is needed for the next Google to come out of Cleveland, the next Facebook, the next eBay, whatever, Amazon, what's lacking here besides capital? So clearly not enough capital. I think we got it. Besides capital, why aren't our startups hitting the big time? What's lacking?
So I think part of it is, JT mentioned a really important point, which is talent retention. So getting those people who have their great ideas to build them here in Cleveland and not go elsewhere. I think that needs to be a key priority for the region, and there's a lot of people who are working on that. So I'd say that's probably number one. And then if you imagine a startup, there are an infinite number of hurdles that they must clear in the early days. But a significant one, and one that I think is really actionable, is access. So an early startup is trying to validate its market as quickly as it can, and really figure out if there's product market fit between what they're building and what the market demands. And so this idea of access and getting access to potential customers or potential advisors who can help them on that path to market validation is important. And that's often their critical challenge, getting to the right people and having someone that will take their call when they are a no-name startup here in town.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things we point to, and a lot of the literature we write at BISDM is look, there's been a lot of people from Cleveland and Northeast Ohio who have done great things. I mean, Craig Newmark, Craigslist, he was the Cleveland guy, so it's about how do you create a culture and an environment. I think we were talking about where government can intersect, and I think you can point to some great examples of why we are where we are today based off of a collective private partner, private and public investments that have been placed over the last 10 years, and I've seen it. I've seen the opposition that have come against it, but really those investments have created, I think, they set the table for all of the things that are we're gaining momentum now. So now it's the real question is how do you get a college graduate out of John Carroll has a great Center for Entrepreneurship, all these places, and how do you foster that attitude and then create an environment where they say, hey, Cleveland's actually not a bad place to be, right? And I think already we have a great amount of change. Look at just downtown, the revitalization, the increase in the youth, the bracket in population downtown. The buzz that LeBron James brings to town, just the fact that you can literally consider, hey, maybe I don't want to finish college, maybe I want to do a startup because I have skills, and I think that opportunity now is more real than it has ever been.
Jen, I want to come back to you about something you said earlier that's related to this question. You said there's plenty of money, not plenty, but money for certain types of innovation, but not others. What did you mean by that?
Well, so, and this is maybe somewhere where Jerry can chime in as well.
Great.
I see, particularly as we've been talking to many of these corporations, there's a lot of capital that these corporations are spending on innovation. But at the startup level, and it's something that I think this crowd is probably familiar with, it's happening across the country, not just here in Northeast Ohio, but there is not a lot of capital for startup level investments. Particularly, and in Cleveland, to be more specific, there is some capital at the very early stage, but then for those companies that actually show real potential, they validated a market, they have a product, they have some revenue, the next phase of capital isn't there. So what I've seen is that there tends to be corporate capital available, but not a lot of early stage capital.
So I think I'm certainly not an expert in sort of the startup community, but I see it from another perspective, right? And especially because our industry is changing so dramatically, I would say I'm bombarded with startups and people. I was at dinner last night with an intriguing company from Boston, but I am inundated with people coming through our doors saying, we have a better way to do lighting for one way.
A better light bulb.
A better light bulb, exactly. We somebody wants to take over for Thomas Edison, but and we have had folks from Cleveland. In fact, we've done some deals with Cleveland. I think that what always comes down. I think your point about access is critical. That's really one of the things I think we can foster and help. I'll say as established members of, or more senior members of the community. I think that's the things where we could collaborate on and make sure that we're getting access to people and let ideas be aired. And I think that's where the capital flows, because it becomes a free marketplace of ideas, but you need to have those ideas all sort of getting at least an equal opportunity to be heard.
Well, I'm going to stay with you for a second. From that legacy corporate executive company's been here 100 years. What are the disadvantages in our community to your company's growth? What are things that we could be doing better to help GE Lighting be bigger, better,
Sure.
faster?
Sure. So I can, I bring this perspective. I have two thoughts in mind. One which it actually pains me at some points, but so we have operations in places all over the world. This is our headquarters, but we have operations in many places, and I can watch what cities or places like Quebec and Montreal do for us, and they're very dedicated to, I'll say, subsidizing the technology development. They make the cost of technology development, engineers in those places, very affordable. We can do high-end engineering in some of those places as cheap as anywhere in the world, because we get tax credits to do that. I think that's as a native, not a native, but a person who's lived here for all of his adult life, I want Cleveland to have that, and I think that would be something that would be very helpful. I think that the other thing that comes to mind is I look at some of the things that we're doing, which are really taking a light bulb beyond what it can be. And in particular, we're putting controls on virtually, we can put controls on every light bulb now, or every lighting system, because they contain a power supply. They almost always now, with an LED, are going to contain a microcontroller. I can start to do things with that technology that you don't imagine. And there's some cities, and they are California cities, that have absolutely embraced that and said, you know what, that light pole can be so much more than a light pole. It can manage my parking, it can sense the weather, it can help me with emergency response. And so we can go have those conversations with a place in cities in California, and they're jumping on it. And we're having those kind of conversations now with Cleveland, which makes me so excited. But I want Cleveland, when the Republican National Convention shows up here, I want NBC or ABC or whoever it is to say, wow, look at what this city has. Look, they are really on the forefront of thinking about how to manage energy and how to make their city run better using all the technology that's out in the world today.
Well,
so sorry, I'm not trying to be an advertiser. It's just
No,
I get fired up. I think we
No,
have
I'm going to
great
go buy a bunch
opportunities
of
in
smart
front of us.
light bulbs now and manage them through my phone.
Yeah.
We use Nest at home, by the way, to manage
yeah?
our temperature.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm
Excellent.
excited about the light bulbs. Perfect segue to you.
Sure.
So California cities are jumping all over smart light bulbs. Cuyahoga County, what are you guys doing?
Well, we've, from a county perspective, the first 3 years, we have obviously a new government. So there's been a lot of centralization of IT within our own. So I'd say that we've been going through a modernization phase at the county, just trying to get our own pieces together before we can even start to talk more and more regionally. But we have been moving forward in the regionalization area very largely in the last 2 years. We're serving roughly about 36 communities, IT services to those here in the county. anything from law enforcement to website services. We've got a large GIS initiative going on right now, which is geographical information services that we're doing regionally. One of the big pushes we're doing for the month of October, for those of you who know, October is Cybersecurity Month. So I don't know how many people knew that. We have been trying to make a very strong push in the cybersecurity space. We've just recently updated our website targeted at people that live in the community, where to go to get help or get information about cybersecurity. We're targeting small businesses as well here in the community, where to go get help for IT cybersecurity issues. And then obviously local governments. So we've been, one thing that concerns me a lot in the region and even nationally is this threat of cybersecurity. I have a quick story. We had a cybersecurity regionalization event last year, and the chief security officer from a large manufacturer here came up and gave a story of they were getting a denial of services. They were basically getting attacked, this manufacturer, and they were able to track it back to this little city in Alabama that had their servers taken over, and they were using them as a point of attack. And the city had no idea that this was happening. City of Akron last year, unfortunately, got hit pretty hard as well. So we've been trying to get the message out to local governments through some state organizations on what to do and how to prevent cybersecurity issues. Cybersecurity, I think, is in the top 10 of world threats, right up there with weapons of mass destruction and terrorism. So it's a realistic threat that we're always on the guard for.
So, I mean, so you had this regionalization of cybersecurity conference.
Yes.
And other conversations. How are local governments responding? Are they?
It's been very well. We actually, as part of Cybersecurity Month, October 30th, give a little plug, we're hosting another local government event in Westlake at the La Center, targeted local governments to come in and learn about cybersecurity. And the state has a large event this month going on as well. Local governments are traveling to better protect themselves.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a
I
comment?
was just going to reinforce that. I mean, as we've moved into this new world, that cybersecurity has turned out to be, we've had to put tremendous resources against some of those controlled systems to just make sure they're not penetrable.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine if everybody in there knows somebody that's had their information stolen from Home Depot or wherever it's been.
Yeah, it's a scary future we face. Well, let's talk about opportunities. We talked a little bit about assets in our region, the people, some of the great collaborations going on among support organizations, some of our corporations that are doing great work. What are our biggest opportunities in the next 10 years to put our companies and our citizens, on the map, really on the map with respect to technology and innovation? What are the biggest opportunities we have here? Jennifer, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I'll start with one of the topics that we were discussing prior to this panel. I sort of started by us saying there's a huge opportunity, I think, for diverse voices like this to come together and think about what we can do together. So Jeff and I were talking about some of the issues that the city is tackling. And the light bulb in my head was, well, gosh, I know some entrepreneurs that could tackle that problem. So it's this sort of collaboration that I think is a huge opportunity. And specifically for our region, with the Republican National Convention coming here in 2 years, or
What is that? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
you have been under a
I
rock.
haven't heard about it at all.
That's a huge, we Cleveland and Northeast Ohio are going to be on the national stage. We've already been on the national stage, and I think, talking to Jeff about some of the technical investment that is going to be coming into this region, it's a huge opportunity for all of us to work together and showcase some of the best ideas, the best execution, and the best innovation that we have here in Northeast Ohio. We're primed for that national stage because I do think some of what's going on here is the best kept secret. And I was in a talk yesterday where someone made the point, and it was specific to startups, but I think it's relevant to everyone, that we're not on an island here in Northeast Ohio. And we're connected to this national and global economy, and we'll have a great chance to publicize that in the next 2 years.
So I want to press just a little bit, specific examples. What is so exciting? A company, a particular product, a service, give us an example of something to be excited about.
So the exciting part is that I don't have a specific idea in my head right now, but what I got excited about, to be concrete, was this conversation with Jeff, where suddenly we were saying, okay, well, so when the delegates show up and the media shows up, how are they going to experience Cleveland? Well, is it hardware? So Jeff was talking about wireless meshes. Is it software? Are there interesting pieces of software or applications that could transform the way that people interact with or experience our city? So an example that we had talked about was one of our companies from this last cohort is a company called Lufthaus. And they're using Bluetooth Low Energy to do proximity-based knowledge transfer, and it works really well with walking tours, trade shows, museums, the type of thing that will be happening, all over the city when the Republicans come to town. So is there an opportunity for that startup to plug into some of the work that Jeff and his team are doing to get the county ready for that?
Sure. JT, you've done a couple startups and advise and consult and do other things. What's a major opportunity? What specific technologies, innovations that are happening in Cleveland are you excited about?
So I'm going to go back. It's not even about the tech, it's about the people. I mean, I think that I know we've kind of kicked this horse a couple times, but it's the root of everything. I mean, not only are we the ones who execute, but we are customers as well, right? That's what's supposed to serve us. So I think it's, a lot, Cleveland's got so much, but I think there's just been this impression that it's not a great place. And I think that now we've made those investments, set the table. Now it's about getting the word out to your networks. You probably know people who don't live around here who have gone off, and give them a call. Tell them, hey, come and visit. Check us out. We'll put you up and check out downtown, in fact. It's a lot different. I think the second thing I want to point out is I think there's a lot of organizations and governments with missions right now, which are all very good. But sometimes, you really have to look at, okay, are those missions getting played out in the way that, is that the outcome you wanted? And I just want to cite it as an example. I did play a lot of Ultimate Frisbee. One of the things we're trying to do is really activate that Mall C space right in front of the convention center. We have a great pickup game that we've gotten going on Thursday nights. And that space was built for the express purpose of public activation. We want people to use it, but they won't turn the light on for us. So we can't stay there for that long.
I think Jerry can help you with that.
Yeah, I'm all
They're there. That's the craziest thing. They're energy efficient. They're all hooked up to an iPad, and I'm sure, but we can't get them turned on. And we would want to facilitate the mission. We want to, and complete that circle. But it's, we're working through it. We're trying to work within the system to figure out. But that's an example, right? So. And that's part of the investments that have been made to create the environment. But what happened with the follow through at the end, right? So that's what I want. Yeah.
So a couple more questions. Let's switch our focus to the roles of agencies and institutions in our community with respect to advancement of technology and innovation. We have governments playing a variety of roles. We have nonprofit organizations, entrepreneurial support organizations, corporations, et cetera. So, whose job is it to push our technology forward? Whose job is it to put us on the map, to make us the next Beijing or, London or whatever? Whose role is that more than anyone else's?
So from my perspective, I mean, it's the community at large. I mean, I don't think there's one sole person. What Jen was talking about, I think it's good to have a rally point to bring that stuff together. And I think what we have coming up with the Republican National Convention may be one of those type of rallying points. I think there's an opportunity. I'm not a convention expert by any means, but what I've read and heard, there's like $50 million of investment coming to the community, some of that targeted at technology and infrastructure. So as a community, what could we do with that to showcase? I think the answer is, different rally points and obviously bringing people together.
Sure. Jerry?
I think you're right. There's not one person, and I don't think we should say, oh, it's going to be this person. It's all of our all of us who are passionate about that, I think we have a responsibility to help create that culture. And what comes to mind is, Jen, you brought it up, but our willingness to listen to ideas that maybe could be crazy, don't make sense, but to listen and try to say where is, and I think there is it's sometimes a tendency to, it's always that it won't work, we've tried that before, and when you go to extremely vibrant places, they check back that it won't work kind of response. And I think that's collectively all of us as interested participants in our innovation and tech world have to choke that back and make, it really becomes a culture of innovation, not one person's job to direct how the world changes.
Well, and to that point, one of the points that I loved from the opening remarks was that idea of ownership, right? And when it's your car, you really take care of it. And I think, to your point, Jerry, everyone, in this room and beyond really needs to feel ownership over innovation and progress. Otherwise, one group cannot do it on their own. So if everyone feels that sense of ownership, I think we'll get there. But that feeling needs to be there.
Mm-hmm. And government's role, unfortunately, both county executive candidates had to leave early, but what is either county government or city government's role? Clearly, you said Quebec is stepping up their game and subsidizing certain things to happen and making it cheap to do R&D. What can government do specifically to help advance some technology efforts here?
So I think that's a
besides subsidy.
Yeah, sure. That's a very helpful one. I think it can still be partnerships that don't look like subsidy necessarily, but it's a willingness to go in together, and both parties have to take some risk. And so what I think of this idea of our system that connects streetlights is a mesh network, and great things could be built on that mesh network. It's the kind of thing, though, we'll deploy it and it won't work perfectly. And I think as a government, you have to say, hey, you know what, we're going to do something that may not work perfectly, but we'll be the first, and we'll trust a partner, a technology partner, to keep working on it to get it right. So I think there's some of that doesn't have to look like a subsidy. I think it can look like a partnership where both parties come to saying, hey, I'm going to give something, but I'm going to try to get something out of it, and we'll make something happen together.
Jeff, besides you serve 36 communities. That's fantastic. Yeah. But do you see other roles for county government to play in advancing technology?
If you look at just Cuyahoga County and the region as a whole, there's 55 municipalities within this county. We have regional partners that are all impacted. So, I think at least as part of my role as CIO for the county is try and bring some of those IT thought leaders together. We do. Might have mentioned in my bio. We're chairing this. I'm chairing this organization called OCEDA, which is a nonprofit IT local government organization to try and bring those folks together. And I think we could leverage those relationships, and that's what Jen and I were talking about before the meeting, is to how could we bring some of that, those contacts and that government regionalization ideas to some of the projects that she's working on to help develop ideas and kind of spur that innovation.
Great. JT or Jen, do you have any perspectives on what role government could play to help advance your efforts?
So it's interesting. The government, and particularly the state government, has been very involved in subsidizing the early stage investment community, as well as to a certain extent the entrepreneurial community. So there has been funding available. That's a bit in transition right now. But I actually think the transition is appropriate, because I think, going back to Jerry's point, the optimal role is some sort of public-private partnership. I think particularly at the entrepreneurial stage, if it's just driven by public funding, there was a role for that, but I think the role going forward really needs to require private funding as well. The public funding helps get it started, so I think whether it's grant programs with matches that some counties do very well. Lorain County has a wonderful grant program that many of our companies take advantage of. So I think there's a role for that, but it has to be in conjunction with a private partnership as well.
Great. JT, any?
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that. I think it's the private public, but I think I'm going to talk about how do you support that entrepreneur? And maybe there's ways that have not been thought about, but when you're an entrepreneur, you don't make that much money. We live in a great place. That cost of living is such that it makes it more palatable to do that here. But maybe there's other ways. Maybe there's other ways to be able to support if you are doing a startup or something. Maybe there's a way that there can be housing, so on. Launch House has done some work there in terms of trying to create resources to be able to support that sort of thing. I think the ideal sort of thing is if you could wake up in the morning and you know that there's a need out there in the world, that you can feel like, hey, I have the means to make it, to go and fill that need. And if we can get that type of feeling in front of all the people who live here in Cleveland, that would create that culture, that environment.
Great. Well, we're gonna turn it over now to a Q&A session. We have a microphone on that side and a microphone right here. So if you want to just come up and ask a question of our panel, please do so now.
Good evening. I'm Terry Malone, and I'm the chapter president for the Northeast Ohio Association of Blacks in Energy. One of the things that you guys spoke to was resources here in the area. And if you guys could address what we're doing to make the talent pool a lot wider and a lot deeper, particularly in those areas where we have underrepresentation when it comes to technology and innovation, not just from driving innovation, but also consumers of the products that could come out of innovation. So if you guys could speak to that, please.
Go ahead.
At one level, it's in my mind, it starts with the schools, and it starts with the folks that we create. And I think the Cleveland schools have made nice progress. There's still, as we all know, room to grow. I think that's, as I look at even, opportunities to hire people, to grow technologists, creating that strong STEM pipeline is absolutely crucial. I think there's the STEM school we actually have on our campus at Nilo Park. That represents for me, it's, as a person who came from an engineering and science background, I think that is the engine of innovation. Having those skills, just being so comfortable and confident with math and science and then willing to see how the world works physically is crucial. And so I would just, for all of us trying to grow representation in our community, in our technology communities with folks from the region and underrepresented folks, it starts with the schools, it starts with that population and us trying to work with the population and make sure we do everything we can to nurture them, and give them opportunities as young people.
On how to get the talent pipeline to be more diverse and deeper?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about mentorship, and I think we need more of it. I think we all have some amazing experiences that other people can benefit from. I know I have been the recipient of a lot of that, and those were very helpful, lily pads on my path. And so I think, when you're talking about cultivating a talent pool, that's the first line. If we can increase the amount of mentorship, and I love, what the governor has placed a lot of investment in that area. I like the things that are happening with the United Way to try to encourage those things. But I would love to see more transfer of experience from those who are experienced to those like myself who are not as experienced.
Great. We have a question up here, I think.
There was just a report that came out in Forbes that was done with McKinsey that said something along the lines of if all the governments were to open their data and allow members of the community to look through it, that you could estimate about $4 trillion worth of economic value to be driven from that. And so I'm sort of just curious as to, Cleveland doesn't really have an open data policy. We're not really leading in this realm. And I was just sort of curious to know your guys' opinions on what we could do to sort of become more competitive there, because it sort of touches on a lot of things that the panel works in, which is sort of both government policy, but also starting businesses based on these sort of opportunities that people might notice.
I can take that one because I think it's a targeted government question. I think we need to do a better job at it. You know, I can't quote you the exact, there's a House bill, I think in front, going through the state to look at setting open government standards for governments. That's making its way through. I had a chance in 2012 to go to a transparency summit that was in DC, and it was very enlightening to see what people are doing in the space and sharing data. I think we can do a better job at it. I'm not with the city, I'm with the county. One of the things that we've struggled with, I know I've had a lot of discussions with some groups around that, is at least from a county perspective, what data would be relevant to do that with. Not a lot of our county services are direct to constituents. Some are, but not that much are. So I think we need to be more open for that moving forward, and I think it's a good thing to support.
And either of you have perspectives on the opportunities presented by more open data policies?
Yeah, all I would say is if to you or anyone that you know who is thinking about this, if you have ideas, whether it's for local data or national or other city data, let us know, because we are on the One Community pipe. So we're really interested in bandwidth intensive applications, and I think the whole world of data analytics, we're just scratching the surface. So if you have an idea, we would love to talk to you.
And I come from the world of healthcare, and data is really hard to exchange. So I don't know if I have any answers. It's about finding a common format of some sort that makes sense, creates value.
Craig?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Craig James. Thank you for all your insights. This relates to the opportunity track that you mentioned. And Mike, you said, what would it take to get the next Google here? And Jane used the topic or the word possibility over and over again. And it makes me think about the current Google. And Google is in Mountain View, but they're not about Mountain View. They're about search and a whole bunch more. And GE is about lighting. I guess the question is this: what are some practical or even impractical thoughts or approaches to break the thinking to the point where we talk huge possibilities in some collective way, to really jazz it up? Maybe we have a global conversation. It's not just about here. Thoughts, ideas?
So I'll tell you about some of the things that we're doing that I think, and in some of them we see these crazy off the wall ideas. We are not constrained by logic. Again, reference to the first keynote. But we do a lot of startup weekends, hackathons, and this new idea that we're looking at for this year are global competitions with some sort of corporate sponsor to say, all right, this is the GE lighting competition for new and innovative ideas in this space. And so getting people together around a topic to dream big. And it's not about coming out with something that looks like a business in 2 days. It's about coming out with those ideas that you say, wow, that's unique. And that has the potential to disrupt an industry or put us on the map. And then you go figure out, okay, well, let's figure out what the next steps are to explore that idea. But getting groups of people together, all these people that we've talked about around topics, I think is the way to do that.
Kind of like idea challenges.
Exactly.
Here's the big challenge we face in our community. Give us your best.
And the constraint is not sort of what's doable. The constraint is time. So you have 2 days. Go out and think of what this is. Form yourself into teams, and think big.
Mm-hmm. Any other ideas for just crazy off the wall? What's really going to break our thinking here?
Again, I'm going to go back to people, but it's really that, because you can't, Mark, if you got Mark Zuckerberg here, he could have maybe made that here, right? There's that, and then there's the second part, which is what is the gatekeeper for ideas moving forward? And to Jen's point, right? Usually it's about, oh, you can't do that. It's not practical. It's blah, blah, blah. So it's about how do you actually think 5 years in advance? Think about what the world's going to be like then, and then make a play for that, even though things now might not really support, or who knows, so that's.
So you said Mark Zuckerberg and Jerry had a visual reaction of disagreement. Jerry?
Well, no, I don't think it's disagreement, but what I think is I'm struck by Zuckerberg or anybody else is, how often they're solving a problem that is relevant to them. They didn't necessarily set out to make Facebook necessarily. He started out to just connect people that he knew in his tiny little community, or Google was, how do I go search for stuff? I think Jen said it earlier, JT said it, but we have strengths in manufacturing, we have strengths in healthcare. We don't have to think, how do we be exactly, like, if you use Google, I think you could say, hey, we have this huge healthcare system here that's world class, it's best. We can make that thing work better. And there's people that live it every single day, probably in this room, certainly 2 miles down the road in University Circle. Those are the people that know better than Zuckerberg or anybody else how to make that system run better, how we can take advantage of data, whether it's big data. So that goes back to using our strengths, and I don't know how to, if you could just say, oh, here's how to make Google, right? There'd be more of them. But I think you gotta concentrate on what we have as strengths and say, those are tremendous assets, and people every day are waking up thinking about how to make them better. And to the extent that you figure out how to make your system work better, the world does end up beating a path to your door.
And one point about innovation is it doesn't come from, or it rarely comes from within one silo. So where innovation gets really exciting is when you have different organizations or people with different skill sets. And really what we like to talk about is it's that diversity of thought, experiences, whatever it is, that's when the big ideas come together. So with healthcare, it's the clinic coming together with GE, coming together with someone else, and that's when it gets interesting. And I think that's really the challenge for us right now, because I think the innovation has been happening in little silos and not cross-region. And that's, I think, our potential.
JT, you had a
Yeah, I think entrepreneurs are exceptional people. Right? These people are taking tremendous amounts of risk, more risk than anybody else would normally want to take. And they're going out and making it happen. And this is, they have to feel like they can do that. They have the context. A great example, a real life example of this is, went to school with John Knifick, who started a company that's now called Decision Desk. And at the time when they started, that wasn't their value prop. They were thinking about doing a social network for music, or around music. And I was sitting with him at it's now the coffee house there, Bika, and he was about to quit. They had just said, we're done. We're done. We're not doing this anymore. It's not going to work. Until they were like, well, but CIM actually has a need, and that's where their company's at. It was all driven, but they would never have gotten there had they not gone through the hoops, had they not gone through and gotten to that point and literally faced failure, complete abject failure in the face, and said, we're doing something else. And this is a guy who quit med school, just declined an offer for that. And and so how do you create those opportunities? Because entrepreneurship takes exceptional people and exceptional opportunity, business context, to try out new things.
And Decision Desk, just to be clear, they do online sort of applications, kind of virtual applications for different.
So for any audition-based type of, I don't want to pigeonhole them into anything, but that's their main forte. They help the schools go through their applicants in a very organized way.
Okay, Dr. Earls, you had a question?
Yes, first commercial. I'd like to ask those in the audience to Google believeinohio.org. That's the program about which I spoke, that is determined to get high school students interested in fields of technology. In the last 10 years, the number of high school students interested in STEM fields has dropped by 35%. Over 40% of the graduate students in this nation are foreign students, and we hope they stay. We're trying to get every student in the state of Ohio who wants to do a project a mentor. That's our commitment. So if you are interested in mentoring students to do projects that could help them in STEM and entrepreneurship, we're not trying to make entrepreneurs out of them, but what we want them to understand is there's a way that entrepreneurs think that we need to translate and get into students and starting in that pipeline. It's not really a pipeline, it's more of a funnel, because they don't just flow through. It gets narrower. So if you would, believeinohio.org and learn about what we are doing. The program at Hudson will have 500 students from high schools, and we're going around the state with that program. But we will fail if we don't get those people willing to serve as mentors. So it's a plea. Thank you.
Thank you. Susie?
Hi, I'm Susie Sharp, and I deal a lot with the smaller entrepreneurs, not the big global ones. And the problem I see time and time and time again with the young entrepreneur is they may have the best idea in the world, they may have the best technology mind in the world, they don't necessarily have the finance thing going for them. And a lot of things fizzle because of their inability to find the right place to get funding or to go to the next step. There's some places you can go to get money and they take a chunk of your business. There are other places that go here. Is there anywhere where there's a one-stop resource for people to educate themselves on the funds that are available around Ohio and for what levels? And I'd also like to thank General Electric for not selling its lighting division and for doubling down and doing the right thing.
So I'm happy to take that one. So I agree with you. It's very confusing. There's a lot of funding for early stage entrepreneurs, but it is very hard to figure out where it's coming from. And frankly, we should be making it as easy as possible for all of these people, whether they're building a high growth technology business or a smaller lifestyle business, to get funding. There's an interesting stat that the Kauffman Foundation put out, I guess it was a year and a half ago, that all net new jobs in the last 20 years have been created by startups. And so it's those people that we need to support. I will tell you, and I'm happy to give you my card afterwards, we are trying to compile a list for our entrepreneurs and the community at large of all of those different sources. Some of that exists. There are some people who've compiled pieces of it, so we'll pull on that. But I think there's definitely a need, because as I said, every day I hear about new sources, but it's a lot for the entrepreneurs to sort through and to try to unearth.
Good evening. My name is Todd Lyle. I'm a businessman from Chagrin Falls, and we've talked about resources. I have to pick that up a little bit. I apologize. We talk about resources. People, there's no doubt, this is a great place to be, the North Coast. What we don't hear a lot about is the Great Lake of Erie. We have the shallowest of the Great Lakes. In the entire Great Lake region, we have 20% of the fresh water in the world. And why I mentioned shallow is because shallow, we have the winds. We all hear about the winds. We hear the nautical reports, not to go out and go boating. But you know what that creates? Tremendous wind power. I know there's some small capsulated programs going on the lake now, but the lake is large enough to generate some tremendous power. In addition, the Great Lakes in general for cooling, for data centers, for cooling them. Now, a lot of us don't want to have our data in the United States right now because everything that's going on, but that will settle out.
So I'm sorry, what is your question?
My question is, why aren't we hearing about the resource of the Great Lake of Erie and the potential that that brings to us? General Electric, you're an electric company. The wind blows every day on Lake Erie. We have tremendous talent, but the talent can't work without power. So I'm asking, why are we not hearing initiatives going to what we have the most of, and that's wind?
Thoughts? Wind?
I'm not sure I can perfectly answer that question. I think that clearly there are things going on in our region. I think there's a Great Lakes Energy Institute led down out of Case, and I know wind is part of what they're working on and what they're interested in. I think you can see turbines have gone up in different pieces and parts of Cleveland. I think that as I look through even what I think I'm aware of in that industry, where big wind farms did go up, some in western regions, there was pretty heavy subsidies that went away at some point in time and really hurt that industry for a while. So I think you know, I can't address why Cleveland didn't concentrate on wind versus other opportunities. I agree that it's you know, it's an important technology that will grow. I think there's some attempts to do things like the Great Lakes Energy Institute, but probably room to do more.
What about water? What about the water? Water for cooling?
You know,
Are you seeing ideas related to
You know,
water,
so
wind?
We are exclusively focused on software, so it's not an area where I feel I can comment. But you know, it's a huge resource. I was just out in California for a couple days, and it made me really glad that I'm living here, where we do have a huge water supply.
But it's more than that. I mean, technology,
yes,
power,
right.
cooling. We got tremendous resources, natural and otherwise. By the way, humans are natural resources. Thank you.
A question up here?
Thank you. My name is Benson Lee. I have a unusual passion. I enjoy commercializing disruptive technologies. I'm on my third. It's currently a fuel cell that I bought from BP. My question is, as I'm listening to the dialogue, I'm wondering why you haven't set the bar higher. At points you'll talk about, more Dr. Earls than anyone, about the big ideas, but yet the infrastructure that we have isn't equipped to handle the big ideas. When I'm often in a panel, I would say, have you thought about starting by setting the bar at a 12? And if you don't make it, you might end up at an 8, which isn't bad, instead of aiming for a 10. And the way to get it up to a 12 is to start by saying, what can you think of that is first in the world, best in the world, or unique in the world? And work from there, backwards. I think that too often we try and get people to see what has been done before and to use templates that have been done before. And yet there are people out there that have the big ideas who are willing to invent the future. So often when we're dealing with professional investors, their body of knowledge comes from looking backwards at what has worked in the past, as opposed to what could be in the future. So I just wanted to make that as a comment and also ask, can any of you think of anywhere here in northeastern Ohio where we could be best in the world, unique in the world, or first in the world? We've heard water mentioned. We have a beautiful emerald necklace that has some unusual activities. We have a core group of hospitals. And I could go on and on. We have one community with all that fiber. Let's not look at it as a thing or an entity. How can you bridge between that and the future and make us unique, first, or best in the world?
So let's have our panel answer that question. Where could we be number one? So it's a derivative of a question I asked, but let's...
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the areas that we are most excited about and we are looking for world-class ideas is healthcare IT. So we are trying to put some partnerships in place that would help us recruit the best in the world to come to Cleveland to build their healthcare IT companies. And I think that we can do that. We're in the early days of some of those partnerships, but I agree with you. And you know, one of the things that at the entrepreneurship perspective, a lot of people will ask, what problem are you solving? Which is a fair question for some businesses. But the question that we also like asking is, what is the opportunity? So not every business is solving a problem. Some are dreaming of a huge opportunity that no one even realizes addresses a problem that they have. So I think your point is spot on. You know, we shouldn't be aiming to do what others have done or replicate what others have done, but rather, where can we really make our mark and be distinct?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that, you know, you're trying to make that thing that's going to be relevant, very relevant in 5 years, you know, and that you can try to generate that proof point. The other point that I wanted to comment on was you're saying about dream big, and if you don't make it there, you'll be somewhere. And I think that's already built in actually into the philosophy of entrepreneurship. You know, you're trained to search for the largest total addressable market. And you know, I think that's where a lot of businesses that are looking for funding struggle, because it's hard. It's very technology driven and not necessarily market driven, and so it can be a challenge. But I do think that it is built in. I think you try to think as big as you can, and if it's not big enough, then your total addressable market will reflect that.
I just have one comment from an IT government perspective. this new government we have in Cuyahoga County, we've pretty much started to centralize processes that we didn't have before. We've centralized the structure. So I think this concept of big data, and that's been the latest hot topic, is starting to hit home. And I'll give one example. We were able to, our Metro Health County Hospital agreed to take over managing our county jail. So we now, Metro Health manages our prisoners at the county jail. And so we started to have the IT systems talk, right? Because they need to check it out. And we discovered that 85% of the people in our county jail have been through the Metro Health system. So when you start to look at big data and what does that mean, what does that impact, how does that channel recidivism issue, which is people returning to jail, what do you do with that data, how do you look at it and just determine root cause? So I think big data is a next big thing for us.
Can I clarify something? You mean the hospital's managing the IT for the jail?
No, they're managing the actual prisoners.
Really?
Inside, yeah.
Am I the only one who doesn't know this?
Yeah.
Never heard that. Okay, well, I'll have to look.
That's relatively new.
Oh, well, we're gonna have to look into that. I've never heard of a hospital managing a jail, so it's.
No, they manage the physical well-being of the prisoners.
Oh, the health.
healthcare
Okay,
piece.
sorry, I'm
Sorry.
couldn't wrap my mind around how a hospital
No.
manages a jail. Sorry,
No, we used to have our own jail medical staff.
Got it.
So now my
Sorry.
Maybe I should have been a little clearer.
Yeah, I was like, what? Kevin, bring us home.
Hi, thanks. I'm almost apologetic at raising the issue, but there's one major issue that always looms in anything in dealing in Greater Cleveland, and that is the high level of poverty here. And if you're looking for a big challenge, none would get bigger than how are we helping low-income families use technology or use some sort of application to be able to improve their lives in the sense of being able to better educate, help to better educate their children or provide better health or something along those lines. And so I would ask if that's a part of any sort of big challenge that we could address is how can we make life better for everyone here in Cleveland, even those who have probably got the least resources to bring to the table.
Well, so we have addressed that through some of the companies that we have invested in. So as I said, we're focused on software, but ed tech is part of that. And what's been interesting is we've had two companies that have been in the ed tech space that have used public grants to get their products, and one of them actually is really interesting and relevant to this conversation. It's STEM education for children ages 3 through 8. And so, the entrepreneur, her model is that she sells this software and physical kits to families that use them with their children. And it was important for her that there was a broad group of people using this, and that families who might not be able to pay for it for themselves were able to get access to it. So she has successfully gotten some grant money, and actually some of it is from local governments to bring that product to people that might not pay for it out of pocket. So it's something that we're supportive of if it makes sense for our businesses, but I think it's a great point and something that we should all be focused on as a region.
Well, Jerry, you had mentioned the STEM school that's
Yep.
on your campus. I mean,
Yes.
that's, I think, very much addressing at least part of the issue Kevin brings up. Are there others that the GE is working on?
Well, we've been a part of this community for a long time. I think that from my perspective, maybe there's a little bit of a chicken or egg thing here. I think for sure the poverty in our community is, part of what we're talking about and what we're searching for is ways to inject big ideas, how to make things happen that give opportunities to lots of folks. And I talked earlier about the specific incentives that Quebec was driving for us, but they started with how do they make innovation happen and technology happen in their region, and when they did that, they weren't starting to try to solve a poverty problem, but what they're effectively doing is creating new opportunities and new things that in that region pull others up. So I don't know that you can attack the problem. I'm sure you can. Just attack the problem from one direction. I think what all of us are passionate about is trying to use technology and innovation to lift the whole community and to give opportunities for folks from all different walks of life.
Well, I'd like to thank our panel for their insights today. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Will with One Community to close out the evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One more round of applause for our panel and for Mike. Thank you so much. Thank you to Mike for playing pinch hitter. We really appreciate it. To Jerry, Jeff, Jennifer, JT, all with J's. I don't know where that came from, but to Julian, there you go, to Dr. Earls as well, and all of you. Thank you so much for being here. We did record the entire event, and it will be posted online. So if you heard some great conversation and thoughts today that turn into action, that is the challenge for all of us, is not to leave this discussion tonight, but to take what you've learned here out and to make things happen. So we'll send you the link once it's live and online. You can share this with your family, your friends, your colleagues. So on behalf of myself, Brad Pitt, and all of the One Community staff, I would like to thank everyone for being here. Hope you have a wonderful night, and thank you so much again. Good night.